If you've been watching this channel for the last 5 years, you would have seen me fit out this workshop with all kinds of builds to make your DIYing and woodworking easier. So now it's a new year and I'm looking to do a bit of an upgrade here in the workshop. I want to review those projects and learn from what I've done, because some have been absolutely worth it and worked well. However, others, well, they've just been a bit of a disaster. It's been 5 years, would you believe, since I started fitting out and using this workshop. And during that time, I produced dozens of videos showing you projects on how to fit out and make your workshop a lot more user-friendly, like shelving and workbenches and lighting and drawers, all kinds of things to make this space more useful. And as it's a new year and I'm going through a bit of a refurbishment, you'll notice that the bench that you normally see behind me isn't there at the moment. I thought it was a good time to review some of these projects to see if they actually lived up to their expectations and they were successful, or whether they just didn't cut the mustard and actually is something that I would never do again. So let's start with something we all need in a workshop and has turned out to be absolutely perfect and successful, and that is my workbench. This was one of the first projects I carried out here and has been pretty central to all the work and all the videos that I've created in this workshop. And I must say, this has been a complete success. And if I had to rebuild this tomorrow, I wouldn't change any of the details at all. Just to let you know, everything you're going to see over the next few minutes, I'll put links to the full videos in the description. So if you want to see how to build this, go and have a look. Anyway, when I built this workbench, I wanted something that would be able not only to take some weight, but to take some abuse when I'm hammering and chiseling, making sure that I can do that without any moving around. So I designed it so the legs are made up from doubled up 4x2s, and the stability from racking either left or right or back to front is from using plywood or MDF fixed along the sides and back, which not only gives you huge strength and stability, but naturally encloses the underside of the bench so you can store tools or whatever you want without them all falling out the sides or the back. Another really important but simple design feature that a lot of novices leave out, but you need to include if you're going to build a workbench, whether you're copying mine or making up your own design, is a really decent lip all the way around the outside. That's because that makes it easy to clamp your workpiece to your workbench. I use these quick clamps all the time. I use a similar on my track saw as well. Here I've got 4x2 on the flat screwed underneath this ply. That means I've got about 60mm, which gives a really strong clamping force, and it protrudes at least a couple of inches all the way around the perimeter so you can get your clamps in nice and easily. If you don't do that in time, you will regret it, believe me. Once I built my bench, the next project was to make it mobile. To do this, I made my own lift system using 4 casters arranged with lever arms made out of 4x2 timber for very little cost. This means I can raise the bench up and move it to where I want and then lower it down again back onto the 4x4 legs. When I put this video out showing how to do this, I received a huge amount of comments saying, "Stuart, it's obvious, all you have to do is put some casters at the bottom of the legs and that makes it mobile." However, I wouldn't advise doing that, because when you're working on a workbench, like routing or chiseling or hammering, it's really important that the force you're putting into the workpiece is transferred down to something solid, like my concrete floor. You'll find that the work is more successful, is easier and safer. So the last thing you want is a workbench that moves or bounces around when you put a bit of action into it. So don't put casters on the bottom of your main workbench. Do that to a secondary bench, but the main workbench really wants to feel well grounded. Right, let's move on to something completely different that, although worked out well, I haven't actually used very much through no fault of its own. 3 years ago, I decided to get my compressor out of the workshop and up into the loft area just to make some more space and reduce the noise of it. I fitted a power socket in the loft to power the compressor, controlled by a switch down in the workshop, which is also connected to a great big blimmin' light. So I wouldn't forget to switch it off when I finished for the day. I could just imagine me walking out and the thing running all night. From here I ran hoses down to a compressed air reel so I could use it for air tools in the workshop and in theory to pump up my tyres on my car just outside. But one comment I did get a number of times when I posted the video, that it would be hard for me to drain the compressor each time I used it because it's up in the loft and then the thing would rust, which is a fair comment. However, what I didn't make clear was at the time was my compressor has an auto drain valve on it, meaning it drains any condensate automatically, so I don't need to get to it regularly and I can just leave it up in the loft and check on it from time to time. However, although this has worked well and got both the compressor and the noise out of my workshop, there's one reason that I don't use it that often, and that is battery power. You see, the main reason I had a compressor here in the workshop was to use my air nailer, but now I've got a battery nailer or two that's just really easy to pick up and use and has no hose. Then I'm finding that I'm using this less and less. The other reason I set up the compressor and had the hose reel near the door was so I could take it out and pump up the tyres to my car. But now, once again, I've got a small Makita tyre inflator, which is just so easy to use and just to take round the car and check the tyres, that I don't think I'll ever use the compressor to pump up the tyres to my car. And I suppose I'm not the only one that's got a compressor that doesn't use it very much these days. Battery power is taken over, so I suppose that's not very surprising. Another project you would have seen me carry out, which I'm actually extending at the moment, is a lightweight work surface for the workshop, which you would have seen me put in 3 years ago in the corner of my workshop, also incorporating my bandsaw, just made from MDF with a perimeter of 3x2 CLS and bolted to the wall, and with a short length of steel threaded rod sunk into the concrete floor just to fix the bottom of the legs. I really like how quick, cheap and simple this type of shelving or surface is, and how useful it is around a perimeter of a workshop. However, what I didn't show you at the time was why I left the underside open. And unsurprisingly, it's all about storage. Now, I think the type of storage that you use depends on the type of work you're going to be doing. I think a woodworker needs different storage to a metalworker, to different storage to a DIY. Now, I settled fairly early on using boxes for my storage because I tend to have lots of things all about a certain subject which I want to keep together. If I had cupboards and drawers, I know that they would be full the moment I finish them and I would never be able to find anything at all. So for instance, this box here contains all my pop-up sprinkler and irrigation type equipment and anything to do with hose lock and hoses. And I've got another box down here full of PPE. Now, the type of plastic boxes I've decided to use are the standard IKEA ones, just because I know that I can get hold of them and they're fairly cheap and cheerful. You can get medium-sized ones and large deep ones. 2 of these deep ones are the same height as 3 medium ones. So as long as you've got a clear opening of about 850, you can get 3 small ones or 2 big ones in, which suits me, and I've just bought more and more over the time. The only thing I haven't done, which I really need to do, is to label them. That's the last thing. But actually, storage for me, this works really well. One project which had huge potential but ended up as a bit of a disaster, and not something that I'd ever do again, was my workshop stroke studio lighting. This is where I use thin 600 square LED panel lights set into light frames, not only to light the workshop, but as I fix the frames to the ceiling with hinges and magnets, I can lower them so they hang vertically, projecting light sideways to aid my YouTube filming. Now, I still claim that the logic behind this project is still right, although there was something that I couldn't foresee at the time, and that is how often that these LED light panels fail. Sometimes it's a light panel, more often or not, it's the driver that drives them, but you have to buy them as a set. And I think in the last 3 years, I've probably changed every one in this workshop. And at £20 plus a set, I've spent a lot more money than I was expecting to. Now, one of the problems that I've ran into was to make sure that the light was really thin. I put the drivers above the plasterboard in the loft. And that's where my plan sort of fell down. You see, to keep the space insulated as much as possible, I only drilled small holes big enough for the wire to go through to the ceiling and through to the light, while placing the drivers in the loft space, feeding the light panels below. This means every time a light fails, I have to go into the loft, remove insulation material, find the driver, replace it, etc, etc, which is a bit of a pain. So much so I've now started to replace them when they go with these LED batten lights. It's like a modern version of what I call fluorescent tube, where the driver is inside. They're cheaper, they're lighter, and they just seem to last longer. The other thing I found is that the idea of being able to pull the lights down to help out with filming at a moment's notice has only been really useful for 2, 3 or 4 of them. Most of them I've never actually used at all. It's easier just to use a mobile video light or two when I need it. Although it was still a good idea at the time, but it hasn't really worked out the way I wanted it to. So I think the future for the lighting for this workshop is these lightweight LED batten lights, which are just cheap and cheerful, and they're so light they're just really easy to put up. I hope that's given you some ideas on how to fit out your workshop in 2026. Hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you next time.